Welcome to episode 235 of the Necronama.com. Tickets are now on sale as the official StokerCon pre-party returns. Spirited Giving, a horror-themed fundraiser, will take place May 29th at the San Diego Central Library. We will have live readings by Clay McLeod Chapman, Jamie Flanagan, Bridget D. Brave, Vincent V. Cava, Danger Slater, and I Zhang, as well as a live performance by YouTube horror narrator Mr. Creepypasta. And all of that is followed by meet and greets, book signings, photo ops, and more. All while raising money for the San Diego Library Foundation, particularly youth reading programs and the Books Unbanned initiative. If you're planning on attending StokerCon, or you're in the area, you do not want to miss this event. It's going to be one hell of a night. Grab tickets now at www.spirited-giving.com and help horror leave a lasting impact on the community of San Diego. And I want to send a quick thank you to Fright Rags, one of our top sponsors for Spirited Giving 2024, May 29th, San Diego, California. Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003, offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creep Show, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I am so excited because Don is going to sing everything he says in this episode.
God damn it. Are you looking at my notes? Because I wrote on here, open with singing. I kid you not. I wrote open with singing. Son of a bitch, you ruined it for me.
You want me? I could redo my joke. You could sing instead.
No. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Gentle thems and theybies. Suddenly Donald is going to stop singing for the rest of the episode because you don't deserve that. You nobody does. I know some people deserve to die, let's face it, but not everybody deserves to hear me sing. I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host podcast that you're listening to. And, this episode is brought to you by understanding that movies from your childhood, although they can age very well, always be aware that there is more than one version of the film that you're watching, because the beloved classic I watched has now been reassigned. And now the beloved classic is no longer the theatrical version, the one that holds a special place in my heart. It is now the director's cut version of this. A lot darker, little campy, little bit of everything going on. But kids, understand that. Pay attention to the different versions that are out there.
It's better than the time that you watched the totally wrong movie. That was fun.
Well, that was me?
Yeah.
Which time was it?
I don't remember. Anyway, joining us today, our guest is Anthony Engebretson. Did I say that correctly?
Engebretson. Yeah.
Engebretson. So close. I was doing
welcome.
Close enough. Thank you.
So why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, man, and your books and all that good stuff?
I am a horror dark fantasy author. I'm originally from Nebraska, living in Michigan, but I've been writing seriously for about 7 years now. My debut novella came out in 2022 from Ghost Orchid Press. It's called Sarbac Sarbanes, which is it draws from Scottish folklore, and it's a dark fantasy novella. My second novella came out in December of 2023 from Tenebrous Press. It's called Lumberjack, which is what I describe as an historical eco-gothic noir weird horror, kind of a mix of many things. And then I have a third book slated to come out in July from Off Limits Press, which is a creature feature horror novella set in Western Nebraska called Hell Pig. And then I have a debut novel slated to come out from Grendel Press called Snow Globe, which is slated to come out sometime later this year or maybe next year.
Nice. So I read Lumberjack, as you know. I absolutely adored it. And I mean, number one, I love just about anything Tenebrous Press touches, but Matt and Alex are just like two of my favorite people on the planet. And but what did it for me was that it was set in Nebraska, and that it was set at a very, if you live in Nebraska, it's a very famous place. And if you don't, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it. It's called Arbor Lodge. And I absolutely love how you used real people in a very interesting, fun way. Would you like to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So it's set in Arbor Lodge, which was the house built by J. Sterling Morton, who he's been a lot of things, but he was mainly known for being the founder of Arbor Day in 1872. So yeah, Arbor Day was founded in Nebraska by J. Sterling Morton, and he built this house. It's in Nebraska City, and yeah, so I had this thought, like I created this character back in college. I was making a student film, and it was kind of about the history of my college, which is in Nebraska, and I had this character in it that was a lumberjack, and he's kind of a lumberjack who kind of loses it and kills this village of gnomes, and that's how the college was founded. And I kind of always thought back on that character and how funny it was, the idea of having a lumberjack in 19th century Nebraska, because obviously there were not a lot of trees back then. And that was kind of the the jumping off point for Morton to found Arbor Day, because he was like, there are no trees here. And of course, there was already an ecosystem, in place in the prairie. And I think a lot of the introduction of many trees, particularly European trees, was kind of erase that ecosystem, which is explored as well in Lumberjack. But yeah, I just thought having that character and tying it into Arbor Day, it just kind of felt like a perfect match. And I went to go visit the actual Arbor Lodge, and just thought it was it's just like a big mansion and out in Nebraska, and I thought it was just would be a really great setting for kind of this horror book. It's kind of a place that could be haunted, but like not so much haunted by a spirit like a person, but more haunted by an ecosystem, which namely like the prairie ecosystem. And so that's kind of another place where I was approaching the Lumberjack novella from. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I when I was a kid, like we always took field trips there and stuff. And so I have this weird thing where no apple cider compares to the apple cider I had there when I was like 8 or 9. And so I have no idea if it's still good there or not, or if it was ever good. But in my head, it's just this miraculous apple cider, right? And so when you brought it up, I literally started like drinking apple cider, or not when you brought it up, when I started reading the book, just thinking about Arbor Lodge, I started drinking apple cider all the time. And I think it's weird how we can get pulled back into these things in our past. And you kind of tap into that in the themes of the book as well. And so it was just really odd to me as an individual that this was happening to me. And pulling me back to my roots in Nebraska, which is everyone who's ever listened to this show knows that I love Nebraska and I would never take any pot shots at the state that I grew up in.
No,
But-
it's perfect.
If it helps, I'm miserable everywhere, Nebraskans, so it's not just you. But anyway, no, I love the book. I love the weird horror, and most of the stuff that I would want to talk to you about it with would ruin the joy of reading it. So I just encourage everybody to go grab it. And now I'm definitely looking forward to Hell Pigs, so I'm excited about that. But so let's bring it to the movie. Why did you pick Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah. So I originally watched this movie when I was a kid. We rented it on VHS from our mom and pop video store in my hometown, and yeah, I really loved it. And I've been kind of on and off obsessed with this movie and the stage musical kind of ever since. And yeah, I love the movie. I love the musical. I've always wanted to do the musical. If I ever reach a point in my life where I'm significantly less busy, I think it would be a lot of fun to audition for if ever there's a community theater doing a production or something, because it's a really fun show. And as I got older and more politically conscious, I was also kind of became more aware of like some of the social commentary that's also in the movie, and just like the class themes and the themes of consumerism and desperation and scams, and just kind of what the American dream, the darkness behind that, and yeah, it kind of explores all of that, but while still just being this fun, wacky movie that also just has some really fun songs and really well written songs. And I hadn't watched it for a long time, honestly, before deciding to do this podcast, or asking to do this podcast, and just watching it again, I was really struck by just how it just moves at a clip. And yeah, like by the time it reached the ending, I was like, wow, we're already here. It just song after song after song, and just kind of really moves at a good pace.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I was just like, wanted to come on and talk about it. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Which ending did you watch?
I watched both. I actually got the Blu-ray.
Both. Jeez. But continue.
Yeah, I bought the Blu-ray with the director's cut, and they give you the option to watch either the director's cut or the theatrical cut. So I watched the director's cut first because I personally prefer that ending, but I decided to go in and watch the theatrical cut as well. I used to not, when I learned what that there was a original ending, I kind of came to prefer that ending more, and because it's darker and kind of has a clearer moral lesson, and I kind of felt like I kind of came to feel like there was less of a lesson in the theatrical ending. It was more just made to appease audiences who didn't like the darker ending.
Mhm.
But I kind of I don't know if we're allowed to mention other podcasts on here, but
Go right ahead.
yeah, there's
If
a
we hate them, we'll edit
podcast.
it out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, there's a podcast called Horror Vanguard that I listened to that did an episode on this, and at one point they just kind of were talking about this ending and kind of how the theatrical ending and the original ending really are just kind of the same ending, except in one the horrific outcome is more delayed, right? But in the theatrical ending, you do have that final shot of the Audrey 2 in the garden, like the happy suburban life that Seymour has won, defeating Audrey 2 is kind of an illusion, like the darkness is still kind of lurking there, and the plants are going to rise up still and get theirs, because ultimately nothing has actually changed.
It's a good point. They are both. It is just kind of delayed, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you could look at it as leading into, James's real double feature, which would be The Happening, where the plants actually fight back.
Oh, yeah.
The Happening is what happens when you order this movie on Wish.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. Yeah, I was gonna say that the same thing with me, where I can't remember if we started this when as far as starting to have this conversation prior to recording, or if I mentioned this when we were recording. So if you're hearing this twice while you're listening, bear with me. But yeah, it was the same thing with me, where I didn't see the movie in theaters. Like I was that we'll see a movie at the Dollar Theater, the second play theater when it comes out. But there was very few opportunities before I was a teenager where I saw a movie like when it came out. This was one of those movies when it was on VHS. Can't explain exactly what VHS is, because everybody who's listening to this under the age of 40 is going to immediately look, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, the used to rent it from Blockbuster, same thing, rent it from Blockbuster, Video Nation, any of these little mom and pop places. And it was a staple for me in my house that I had this movie. And I have not seen it in probably 30 plus years, and everything still hits. It's like, and I don't want to, play around with words and innuendo. I don't want to, make any type of puns, but I'm going to have to right now. But this movie hits every note. Because it drives the fear of survival. It drives, it has this discussion without having the discussion about domestic violence, because it's there, but it's never really discussed, right? You've got the idea of people just being destitute and looking for something to get out. If you're in a situation like that, I mean, they name the place Skid Row. That is the name you give a place when it's the absolute bottom. Like, you are not going to escape from this because of, drug use, violence, any number of issues that people attribute to it are going to keep you there, as well as economic issues. But this movie, it shows how people in a desperate situation won't necessarily do something because they're desperate, but they're going to be coaxed into doing things because of systemic issues or other people, because here's a solution. Even though I'm not recognizing as a temporary solution, here's a solution to get out of the situation I'm in. And desperate people do things that they otherwise wouldn't do, like, feeding a chopped up dentist. Well, first chopping up a dentist, but then feeding a chopped up dentist body to your plant.
People don't normally do that.
It depends. I mean,
no reason.
Botanists and horticulturalists, they do a lot of stuff.
My wife is terrified of this movie, and it's because of the dental scene. And I hadn't seen this in like 20 years, right? And in my head, it wasn't that bad. So I was like, why is she so afraid of this? And then I watched it, and I literally went in her room, and I was like, you know what? I apologize.
Wait, which dental scene?
The drill, the really bad drill scene. That's the one that
The one with Bill.
can't stand. Yeah, with Bill Murray.
Okay.
Yeah, and but yeah, so she literally got me to walk in there and fully apologize. I was like, it still doesn't affect me, but I get it, and I'm sorry.
It's a lot for you to apologize, man. That's something.
I apologize to her way more than I apologize to you.
I just meant anybody. I don't need your apologies. Anthony, before I guess we go in there, I mean, where do you want to take us on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of hitting on it there with the talk of just the desperation, right? And how people will kind of do anything or really fall for anything because we have these desires, right? Whether it's money, love, security, just or trying to meet our goals, and that's kind of where scams come in, right? And scammers, and there's a scam that all of us would fall for because we all have a desire and there's someone comes in with an easy way to meet that desire. It's even if it's completely very obviously not true. We can become vulnerable to that. We can become susceptible and maybe let ourselves believe that maybe this will get us everything that our greasy heart desires, right? And so like that's Audrey too is a scammer, and much like the ones that we deal with every day who are always trying to call us or email us or posting stuff on job boards or just trying to target the desire, and they're desires that either we have innately or desires that society has kind of forced us to have, which is like like the need for money or that the need for that security, and so I think that's a interesting way to look at Audrey too.
Don, I was thinking about what you said about how they slightly, not even slightly, it's definitely there, but like all the domestic violence stuff, how they touch it, they also don't.
What I mean is they don't show it. That's what I mean. As far as like they touch on it, but they don't get invested in that story. You understand some shit is going on, and thankfully it's not a thing of like, oh, let's turn this into a plot point or dialogue or show the violence that's there. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No. I find it fascinating how they used it to make us okay with killing him, right? But also my real question, because I know you're much more of a movie encyclopedia than I am. Was this normal at the time? Like not fully showing it, but kind of starting to hit it, and like were we having these conversations, or like?
Yes and no. The conversation, I'm glad you asked that, because this is one of the notes I wrote. It was all the excuses that were given, right? So you had movies, television shows, things like that were addressing domestic violence, but it was only addressing it in the sense, and I don't mean only, it was only addressing it with a focus on physical violence. It wasn't talking about controlling behavior and the way people, like, we started getting those in the 90s with a lot of the programming, some of the sitcoms, some of the movies, some of the horrible movies like the Mark Wahlberg classic Fear, where there's a 20-something-year-old guy dating a 16-year-old, but the dad is only upset when he finds out the guy's mean. So anyway, or a criminal or whatever it was. But no, you start having this discussion in the 80s and the 70s. You had late 60s, early 70s, and throughout you had the women's rights movement. You had more women in the workplace. You had divorce. You had no fault divorce, access to no fault divorces in some states. You had access to credit. So you had women that were able to get away from this and could be more vocal about their experiences. But the stuff was happening. But as far as having these discussions about it, they weren't discussions in the sense of here's a way to help somebody, here's a way to help yourself out of this situation. It was more treated as though this is this one guy who happens to be an asshole. As long as we get him away from this one person, and I almost feel like that's the same thing here. If we get him away from this one asshole person, things will be fine. Or you have to respond to that person with physical violence. There's an episode of, why'd you ask me about the Internet Encyclopedia? Now I'm going to do it. There's an episode of Roseanne where Jackie's boyfriend is hitting her. Now, of course, they do the same thing. They never show it, but they show the after effects, bruises, black eyes, things like that. And the way the response is captured or presented in that show is Dan shows up, beats the shit out of the guy, and goes to jail. And the discussion is not, hey, here's a conversation about domestic violence and partner violence, things like that. It becomes an issue of, it gets the narrative presented of, if a guy's hitting a woman, you beat the shit out of him. It wasn't, let's go seek out resources for these women. Let's go, not just women, but I mean, women were being presented predominantly as the victims, where men weren't being focused on. But even with that, the way it was presented towards women as well as young men, I'm saying within the cishet framework, it was presented as though you shouldn't complain. The guy has a job, and she brings it up. He's a professional. He makes good money. He's the only fella that I got. The idea that you can't do better than them, the idea that you can't achieve any goals unless they assist you, like the same type of cult behavior. It's all abusive behavior. And that other person's control over you gives them joy. And you see the flip of that, which I didn't get as a kid. You see the flip of that with Bill Murray's character being introduced as the masochist. So you've got this sadistic dentist. You've got a masochist who shows up for an appointment. Being Steve Martin's character, chooses this job because he likes inflicting pain on people. And Bill Murray's character pisses him off to the point where he gets thrown out because he's enjoying the pain. Like so much, but you see how like these figures are very controlling. They're possessive. They berate. They attack. They do all these things with people that they feel they can do that too, and shape that other person, their partner's mind into thinking that one, they deserve to be treated that way because of that elevated status the other person has, or because you don't have any options, and you just have to deal with it. And unfortunately, we have people that are still acting like that is the way we should, conduct ourselves today. I'm of two schools of thought. I believe that any domestic violence individual who gets involved in domestic violence, as far as putting their hands on somebody else, I'm not going to feel too badly if they get eaten by a plant, to bring it back full circle. And then two, the other thing, the timing of this is important. If you or somebody you know is a victim of domestic abuse in any form, physical, psychological, financial, emotional, whatever, the National Domestic Abuse Hotline is 800-799-7233, or you can text the word START, START, to 8878. And I'll stop that before we talk about 8 billion other things.
No, that's
but
helpful.
Long answer to your question, yes, that stuff was around, but it wasn't as deep as it should have been, because it was still one of those things that we didn't fully understand how to talk about it. Quantum Leap had episodes about domestic violence, as I said, Roseanne. I think even even Fresh Prince had an episode like that. oh god damn, what was that college show? A Different World did episodes on sexual violence and partner violence. But again, it was more an issue of here are the signs, recognize them, get out of the situation, with very little discussion about how to get those resources, or how to manage the psychological journey that you have to go on to get over that trauma, or at least move past that trauma and get closure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anthony, I didn't mean to pull it too far from what you were talking about. I just wanted to hit it before we got away from it. No, I think that was actually like super helpful, especially offering the hotline numbers and stuff. But Anthony, I want to bring it back to you, and you can take it wherever you want, and I won't do that again.
Oh, no, that was really, really important. And I think, it's with the Steve Martin character, or in Scrivello DDS, it did feel like that domestic violence angle, I guess, for lack of a better word, is just it is kind of a device, almost like to keep, make him as vile of a character as you can, right?
Absolutely.
He's this deeply abusive person who not only he physically abuses his partner, which is in itself bad, but he also abuses his patients physically, and he is also a over the top, kind of ridiculous character in an evil way, but it's kind of like, you kind of have to, they kind of push him out there to make him as bad as possible. So it's almost like you can sort of understand why Seymour would sort of take that leap, right? He's not just killing some random person who he can kind of justify it, or you can see how he can justify it.
Oh yeah.
But it, but it doesn't really, it kind of presents this issue then of the domestic violence without, as Don said, having a kind of a meaningful conversation about it. But this probably wasn't the only movie at the time that did that. Yeah.
Well, and a full discussion on it would be really weird in this movie.
It would be. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Audrey, you gotta leave him.
Right.
But he's a professional.
Yeah. And I know, he, and just I love the dentist song in this, and frankly, I think if that's probably the character I would want to play, honestly, just in the show, just because he's just, and I don't know,
knew we'd get along.
Yeah. and I always think, like, non-Americans watching this movie might think to themselves, like, why would anybody go to this dentist?
He's the only one in network.
Exactly. He's the only one in network with insurance companies. He allows for payment plans, all the rare things that dentists usually don't do. It's like, to get your teeth taken, speaking of scams, taking it back to scams, American healthcare, it's, if an affordable option was the dentist who literally tortures you, I think a lot of people in this country would take it,
It's so sad, but so true. Man.
He's a good guy. You might die, but
right.
You can't beat his copay, not the copay, the out-of-pocket costs.
Right.
I love that it's Steve Martin as well, because like there's just something so fantastic about this actor that we normally adore and love, who's fun, and like he's the dad in movies, and then playing this role he brings something excellent to the over the topness of the character to begin with. But when you mix that with what you normally know about Steve Martin, like it just hits so hard and it's so great. And I love how he's still fun. Like you hate this character, but he's still so fun to watch.
Look, I'm going to tell you, we kind of jumped over some. The most surprising thing, the most disturbing thing is seeing a wonderful, vivacious, young Steve Martin with color that actually has, I'm sorry, with hair that actually has a color to it. It was so odd to me as a child seeing him, like, he has white hair. Why does he have? But no, I don't like this. Is so when I was a kid, I felt bad for Steve Martin's character because one, I love Steve Martin, but I didn't feel bad for him. Like, oh, yeah, he needs to slap Audrey around a little bit more. It was more an issue of like, he's an asshole, but he should probably like be taken to the authorities. That's what I was thinking as a kid. But then there was also the kind of thing where he realized what he did was wrong, at least from my mindset as a child, because he's like, oh, why are you doing this to me? Oh, her. And then he dies. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, shit. Well, he sounds like he's sorry. But then as an adult, right? Because the way it's presented, he's fun, he's campy, it's Steve Martin, right? As an adult, I'm sitting here like, but Audrey doesn't get her resolution. It's not like, oh, I had this, there's no agency of Audrey. Not that that's an issue that needs to be done, but there's no, I solved the problem. If this were redone and updated, let's just say, 21st century mindset, I could see the story being different to where Audrey has the chance to stand up to him. And I don't know, he dies of asphyxiation kind of the same way. Seymour goes to confront him, sees the dead body, take the body, to Audrey. Like I feel as though like we lose something, but again, it's 86, it's based off of previous play and film. But I guess it really fits in with that 1980s, well, I should say 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s mindset of like, you got to go take care of this because it's the woman that you care about. But yeah, I felt bad for him at first, but when I became an adult, I was like, no, fuck Steve. I'm sorry, fuck the doctor. I hope it. And I also thought to myself, because I was rewatching it, I'm thinking like, okay, there are going to be some changes. I'm like, well, did Seymour shoot him? Did he chop him up in the office? And when they do it, I'm like, well, they kept it the same. So there's not that guilt of I killed him. It's just I didn't help him while he was dying, succumbing to something that he did to himself. We got a body. I need to use the body, dispose of it. But I even hate the fact that Seymour blames himself for killing everybody. Not saying that he's faultless, but when he's confronted by Audrey, she says, "Oh, I fed Oren and I fed Mushnik to Audrey," but he never really did. I mean, he fed Oren, but he didn't kill Oren. He just fed his dead body to him. And then Mushnik, greed got the better of him. He turned around and, saw an excited Audrey waiting for him. But I think it's also telling, because I think in that same situation, any one of us would still have that guilt of you were associated with it. You raised the plant, so you got that guilt there. But then also you're the one who, quote unquote, unlocked this thing of they need to be fed blood. So where do you stop? Can you stop? No Diddy jokes, James.
Damn it. Diddy can't stop.
Well, not in the U.S. territories, he can't. So anyway, other or abusive, horrible. I'd feed Diddy to Audrey too. There, no guilt at all. I would feed Diddy to Audrey too.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to have. Is would you feed the plants, and who?
Well, let's go ahead and answer that, man. I had a similar question, but what would be the rules for killing somebody? Or sorry, serving somebody up, James?
I'm feeding everybody. No,
Jesus, man.
taking out those 3 singers because nobody seems to even know they exist. No,
Wow.
I'm kidding. I'm
Wow.
kidding. But no, I would definitely take out the dentist. I mean, but I think that it'd be really easy to get addicted to that too. Like you're getting stuff out of it. Like he cuts a deal with Audrey too, like I think that it could get out of hand really fast. So I think even if you started with good intentions, the temptation would be, some guy pissed me off in traffic today, at some
First
point.
of all,
Like,
Audrey was played by the lead singer of the Four Tops, so don't bring the Temptations in.
good God. But yeah, I just no, I think I would definitely do what he did. And I think I'm also clumsy, so I'd probably accidentally feed myself to it, but yeah, I'd worry more about the temptation of just it totally getting out of hand.
All right, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a scam for all of us, and I think if the plant comes in and is like, I will be your agent, and I will get you a nice book deal, and you'll never have to work again. Yeah, I don't know. I might be like, okay, maybe there's some Nazi somewhere that I can find for this plant.
Oh my God, I think I changed my answer.
Me too. I'm going to take out everybody who has any Twitter drama at all. No, I'm just kidding. No, I that's kind of what I meant. Like, I think that you would start doing stuff like that, right? Like, you'd be like, oh, he's a known, he goes after underage girls. Let's throw him in, like we hear things about this guy. Let's throw him in. Like, I think that, yeah, I think I'd use it for all the wrong reasons, even though I had good intentions.
Yeah, but it would definitely end with me falling in and getting eaten up myself as well. So
he'd be so big by then, there'd be nothing we could do.
Yeah.
What about you, Don? Who are you, without using the Nazi answer, what was your original answer?
Well, I was going to say it would be a great way to start your own funeral home. Like, your own. No, I'm being 100% serious. Like, you have a situation where, say, individuals, they want a non-traditional type of burial or whatever it is, right? You just turn it into like, hey, this is going to serve the planet. It's gonna reduce waste. It's gonna reduce the number of chemicals that you have to. Now, if you keep Audrey Troop in like one place where it's controlled, I don't see there being an issue. The issue is Audrey too was able to get out. I mean, in the original version, because of the cuttings, and in the directorial version or director's cut, Audrey 2 got out because it was basically like the Cabbage Patch Kids or Cabbage Patch Dolls or Chia Pets. It became marketed and became part of consumer culture. But if we're talking about, as it's originally stated, there's just that one that's there, the only one that had landed. I'm going to keep it in an area, and I'm going to make that deal with Audrey too. And it would be, I will bring you, dead bodies, because according to him, they don't have to be alive they don't have to be alive because the doctor is served up dead. He's just fresh. Mushnick is served up alive. Audrey served up alive, and Seymour in the alternate version is served up alive. So I would enlist funeral homes, mortuaries for these services. That way, I don't even have to get the bodies. It's simply bring them here. Just bring them here. Drop them off. So nothing too nefarious. But I've also been watching. Well, no, I was going to say the change then becomes, I now turn this into, well, let me preface. I've been watching way too much like cartoons with my kid. And I don't mean way too much as far as like, oh, it's not. I mean, like, we've been watching like hours of the new Tiny Toons. Well, I should say we almost finished it, but we were watching it and it made me think about cartoon rules. Duck season, rabbit season. You just simply put up a sign saying, "Hey, free Nazi meeting, free hats," or whatever. They'll come to you. They'll come to you. We're meeting in the basement at 123 Main Street. Only one person can go in at a time.
So my question was, does it change your mind at all if it's an actual plant versus knowing that it's an alien?
No, because now I could actually communicate with a sentient being.
I mean, you know it's sentient either way, but
well, yeah. What I mean is, it's not an inanimate object. It's a living plant versus a living being.
I guess I just find it interesting that I would be less trusting if it was an alien than a plant, and I have no idea why.
Oh, I'm not trusting it either way. I'm just saying, like, I would just go ahead and work out the deal.
I would totally
because
be like, oh, you're a plant. It's fine.
Well, the sad thing is, we would look at it, and we look at it as like, oh, I can turn down the deal, but Audrey can make a deal with somebody else, because that then becomes God damn it, that becomes the other thing, right? So you've got Audrey who makes that who makes that comment about there's nobody else who'll take me, there's nobody else who'll want me. But I feel the inverse. If you're the person who's running that shop, now that Audrey is there, right? Audrey 2 is a thing and Mushnick is gone. Now your fear is, if I don't make the deal, Audrey 2 is going to choose somebody else to make these deals. So I think the same thing, like when it first starts off, it's that idea of, I should do this. I can do this. I'm seeing some results. And I don't necessarily want those for somebody else, because what if somebody else happens to use this for bad? What if somebody else puts you in the Audrey's mouth?
Craziness.
Well, you'll even look at Mushnick, right? So when Mushnick catches him, or he doesn't catch him, he sees him, he sees what he's doing, he saw him, an axe murderer, blah, blah, blah. Even as they're walking out, Mushnick makes that comment and says, like, hey, how about you just, go away for a little bit, get away and you do X, Y, and Z. And after 30, 40 years, you come back, and it's clear as an audience member, not necessarily clear with Seymour, but it's clear that Audrey 2 is going to use whatever power Audrey 2 has to find somebody else if you don't give Audrey 2 what it wants. You're the only one who can do this. And if I don't do it, Audrey 2 dies, or Audrey 2 moves on to somebody else. So you got another abusive relationship. You got a manipulative relationship between Audrey 2 and Seymour.
Cool. I don't have anything to add to any of that. No.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with as of this recording, there's the eclipse coming up. So it's, if there's any strange fly traps around after that, maybe just go the other way.
Don't go the other way. Destroy it.
Or destroy
I was actually mad that I didn't schedule this to drop on the eclipse day. Like, it's like, damn it, we've already given that away. But yeah, no, I think that I think when you suggested this movie to me, I was thinking, like, again, I hadn't seen it in 20 years, but I was like, man, is there going to be a lot of social commentary? And I'm sitting here like amazed at how much they put in what is essentially seen as kind of a goofy musical fun thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm always fascinated by how, like, horror in itself is so good at putting in social commentary when you expect none. But then you mix in these elements of humor and everything else, and I'm fascinated by how it makes social commentary digestible. It makes you not pay attention to that you're learning stuff. And everything we've been talking about so far and everything we're going to keep talking about, I find it so great that you can take something that seems ridiculous and put so much real shit in it, and you can go hard like domestic violence. You can ask these questions of, would we make the choices Seymour makes? But also, like, you just brought the eclipse into it, which is a very real thing, and I know why you did, but like, this is something that's not affecting, but it's something that's interesting to most people, like nationally, you know. And I don't know, I'm just sitting here blown away by how much they can put in something like this to appeal to everybody at once
without hitting you over the head with it.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say, and I kind of lost it there. But yeah, like, it's not overt, it's not pulling you out. If you released this as is, I don't think everyone would be like, well, that woke fucking plant over there, you know. Like, we'd be like, oh, that's Petey Piranha, I saw him in Mario Kart, and that'd be about it, you know.
Oh my God! Yeah,
who haven't we touched?
Oh, I was going to say that it was interesting that the one thing I left off about Steve Martin's portrayal of Oren Scrivello of BDS is that he did a really good George W. Bush impression the entire time.
That's a good point.
That's all I thought. I was like, is this a George W. Bush impression? And then I realized, like, George W. Bush wasn't a thing yet. I mean, he existed. He just wasn't part of pop culture.
They cut his song, "You Should Have Made Me Commissioner of Baseball."
I just think that one thing would have changed history.
I couldn't resist. But yeah.
You know, I wrote down this because, again, it wasn't my feeling when I first saw this movie, but it definitely was when I was a kid. Well, it definitely is now. With either version, for that matter. I just look at it as like, God damn, Seymour, you are a piece of garbage. Like, you are a horrible person. Because, I just chopped up her man. I wrote down, I just chopped up her man, but I'm going to take advantage of this compromised girl. Because it's not an issue of like, he's trying to talk her through the therapy. It's kind of like, yep, now I'm looking at you. Suddenly Seymour sees Audrey. Oh, I love you. This is great. We're going to run off and get married together. I just looked at it as like, wow, this is Seymour. You're not a good guy. You're horrible.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about how terrible that is.
Yeah.
But that was just me. I just looked at it and but then also kind of the cool, I don't want to say cultural nods, but I guess they really would be. Just the idea of Audrey using the payphone, which was a fantastic feat as far as like the visual of Audrey pulling itself across the floor. But the fact that when Audrey uses the phone and is done, immediately flips the change receptacle to see if they can get the coin back. That was a very common thing that people did up through when phone booths died off, or payphones died off. But it was a very common thing. You would see it in television shows, you see it in movies, people would do it in public where it's like, I made my phone call, did they accept my quarter or not? You open it up, maybe you had some change, maybe you didn't. But it was that and just even kind of like the word plays with so much stuff about going somewhere green, and the person playing Audrey, her name is Green, and Mushnick, his last name is Gardenia. I just love the way that so much stuff fits into this. But anyway, it's just fun to watch this movie after not seeing it in so long. But I don't know. I don't really have anything else. I mean, I've just really got that. I mean, we can discuss those alternate endings, and because it's going to be fun.
Well, Anthony, what do you have in your notes that we haven't touched?
I wrote when I was watching the movie, John Candy plays your average extrovert.
This movie kind of made me sad though, seeing him, because there's so much joy. Like Robin Williams, like there's so many great comedians of our childhoods where you're like, damn, like John Candy, I mean, both of them were sudden deaths, but it was like John Candy hit me in high school, or was I middle school? High school or middle school. And then of course Robin Williams when I'm an adult, it's the same reaction where it's like, shit. Like,
Yeah.
We've lost. I mean, aside from their families losing them, but like collectively we've lost like somebody that we were so connected to, even if it was a parasocial relationship. But I'm sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, I just like this movie has a really, I think, great cast, and I think every role is, even with the, last name play on words aside, I think it's pretty perfectly cast in my opinion. Rick Moranis is Seymour, Ellen Green, I think is her name, as Audrey. I can't remember who does the voice of Audrey too.
Levi Stubbs.
Levi Stubbs, yes. And just like all of the kind of cameos of John Candy and Bill Murray and yeah, I just think this movie has a really great cast and really great puppetry, like amazing puppetry, I'd say, and it's like some shots I just couldn't even believe that it was all done by puppet and I'm just, this is just a really well put together movie aside from just being fun. And so I just wanted to, I guess, gush about that a little bit.
No, I agree completely. The only thing that I think we haven't touched that's in my notes as I'm looking over them is the media sensationalism of the whole thing. I absolutely love how the media runs with Audrey 2 and how, Mushnick suddenly has all these people in his store because it's in the window and it's something different, but then that blows up on like this like way bigger level. And we just did Sorry to Bother You. And I look at it the same way. It's like just the way the media takes over and people don't go, hey, that's fucking terrible. Instead, they do the direct opposite, right? And just buy in completely and everybody's obsessed. And it's just like this mob mentality to let safety go and to not question terrible things that are happening or could be happening. And I don't know. I love how I shouldn't say I love, that's the opposite. I'm fascinated by how that's never gone away. Like even if we watch way older movies, it's there, like especially once the dawn of television came, it's just always been there. And we watch it daily on social media or the news or anything else. And it's so sad and so fascinating to me how that never changes. We just ignore whatever terrible thing and we accept it, and half the time we celebrate it.
Well, James, is it really more an issue of the carnivorous plants or whatever else is going out there, or is it just about FOMO? I mean, which one has more control?
I wish I was eaten by the plant.
Look, that rush that they made and the sensationalism of it, for those of you who aren't old enough who may be listening, it is straight out, and in the alternate ending, it is straight out of the news footage of the 80s where people were fighting with hands and with other instruments, fighting each other over Cabbage Patch Kids. It's just, humans are very interesting when we have shiny things that we want or when we're distracted by those shiny things. We're willing to kill anybody.
That's right. Give me my Windows 3.1 right now, damn it.
Well, that's even the reason why the news even covers Black Friday. It's an issue of they're concerned about if we want to see something happen and we want to show it. So their biggest complaint over the last few years, at least those within media, is like Black Friday isn't what it used to be, because everybody can shop from home. Like, you're not fighting anybody at Walmart at 2 o'clock in the morning, on Black Friday for a TV. You can just simply order it. And I mean, if you have the ability to, you can order it and have it delivered. Like, it's not a thing that, they have that much control over anymore. Now, I will say this, a really cool pop cultural thing that came up as a result of this play and film, this universe. When the play came out, Stanley Seymour's character became part of the American lexicon. So instead of the name of the play was something like Krellboyne instead of Krellborn in the movie, or the later adaptation in play and movie. It was initially Krellboyne, and that name then became a nickname for anybody who was a nerd or a geek. You just call him a Krellboyne.
Wow, I did not know that.
Nope. No. Just discovered that it wasn't something that was just from Malcolm in the Middle. It was something that was actually used in that time period, not widely, but it was the same thing as if you accuse somebody of cutting glass. Like, you had to know in order to understand what they were talking about, and not everybody was, calling everybody a Krellboyne, but it was a popular nickname. And James, I'll tell you about cutting glass after we get off the air.
Good God.
No, I'm kidding. I won't deprive any of that. Cutting glass, I found out when I was teaching high school, because high school students are very fun when they find out new information. They discovered that in 1930s lingo, cutting glass meant that it was obvious to everyone around you that you were cold because your nipples were hard. So you would say to somebody they were cutting glass.
Ah.
Huh.
So that has stayed in my head for the past 15 years since those kids told me that. It's all 1930s slang and lingos they were looking at.
Wow. And here I'm just fascinated that millennials just found out about Mad Dog 2020. But
Oh my God, not Mogan David. Good old Mogan David.
But yeah. Well, I don't have anything else in my notes. Do either of you?
Well, the only thing I'm going to say after what you just said is, kids, don't experiment with alcohol that your parents barely survived.
That's true.
That's true.
Man, 2020, Jesus. They're gonna discover Four Loko, the original formula next.
Oh man. I hope.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh.
We'll edit it out so that you're not responsible for. No, I'm just kidding. Millennials don't listen to our show.
That's on them.
Well, cool.
All
right. Yeah.
I don't have anything else about this movie. I did watch the original 1960 movie, and yeah, I watched it. Way back, I watched it, and I hadn't realized back then that it's actually still a dark comedy. It's actually a pretty funny movie, and I don't think I need to really point out all the differences, but I think it's interesting that the whole thing about Audrey 2, or Audrey Jr., as the plant is known as in the original Little Shop of Horrors, is there really isn't as much of the angle of the plant being a scammer. It doesn't really have any of the promises that it gives, like, feed me and I'll give you this shiny car and all these shiny things. It's just the plant doesn't really have much of a personality at all. It just says feed me, and but there's still that kind of poverty and class desperation. There's still Skid Row. The shop's poor. Seymour and is poor. He's not an orphan. He lives with his hypochondriac mother. But yeah, so I thought it was kind of interesting, those differences. But I think the Little Shop of Horrors, the original one, is still pretty fun movie, and it's worth watching. It's not a musical. The musical is based on the original, and then the 1986 movie was based on the musical. But yeah, one funny note I was just thinking about is how it's kind of on the subject of scams. Like the Little Shop of Horrors, the original one, is a public domain, so any 2-bit distributor could sell it, basically, and he's like on DVD, and they would always tout Jack Nicholson as the star, right? He'd always be the name on the DVD. This is Jack Nicholson's debut movie. He is in the movie, but he's only in one scene, right? He plays the character that Bill Murray plays, the masochist who goes to the dentist to get his get his fix of pain. He's a one scene bit character, but of course, when they distribute these movies, they want people to buy them, and so they're like, "Oh, Jack Nicholson starring in Little Shop of Horrors," and it's but yeah, it's public domain. You can find it on YouTube. That's where I rewatched it, and yeah, it's I think it's, even though it's an old movie, I think there's still a lot of funny stuff in it, and yeah, it's worth checking out.
Is Audrey 2 still an alien in that?
No, the whole eclipse of the sun, the outer space angle is not there. Like, the only explanation that Seymour ever mentions is that he got it from a Japanese gardener who found the seeds in a plantation next to a cranberry farm.
Huh.
And guesses that it's a cross between a Butterworth and a Venus flytrap. So there's really no explanation of where the plant comes from, or if it's from outer space, or the whole, I guess, the eclipse of the sun aspect, and Audrey 2 trying to take over the world, that was added for the musical and the 86 movie.
Interesting. I didn't realize it was that different at all. Like, I didn't even know that it wasn't a musical, for instance. So I know nothing about it, is what I'm saying. But I didn't expect it to be that different.
Yeah, but it's just still good. So,
Don, have you seen that one?
No, I have not. I'm interested in it. But now I'm disappointed because I won't get to see Jack Nicholson sing.
My dear God. Well, all right. If that's everything everybody has, we'll move on to movie recs. Anthony, you're the guest. If people liked this, what do you suggest they watch?
I already said one of them, the original Little Shop of Horrors, 1960, and like I said, that's it's public domain, so you can find it on YouTube. And another recommendation I have, I was just kind of thinking in terms of like this cute thing that you get and that you really need to be careful about feeding. And then if you do feed it, or feed it the way you're not supposed to, it will grow into something more sinister, and you will lose control. And it's an 80s horror comedy with great puppet effects. I would recommend Gremlins, and both Gremlins movies, and they love to sing, right? That's the
I like that a lot.
Another commonality. But I mean, it's I think that I would maybe throw Ghostbusters in there as another kind of 80s horror comedy with a lot of comedic well-known comedic actors, and great special effects. I think that those would pair well with this as well. And then I kind of threw in as a joke answer Godzilla versus Biollante, because you got the giant plant. It's a Biollante, I believe. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's like a rose bush, or like a rose with Godzilla cells, that turns it into this giant plant monster that I don't know if I don't remember if it eats blood, but it fights Godzilla, and probably wants to take over the world. So
Doesn't everybody? Just kidding.
yeah. No, well, according to Tears for Fears.
Oh man. All right. My double feature is not the happening, no matter what Don tries to tell you. I went with Rocky Horror because I feel like together that's just a fun watch, lots of singing, lots of horror, lots of crazy shit. I don't know, just seems fun together. I will throw in the honorable mention of literally anything Rick Moranis ever did, because I've been blown away by every performance he's ever had, and I've loved every minute of watching him on screen. So I just think you should have more Rick in your life. All right, Don. 420 movies. What do you got?
Well, 418 now, because you guys took 2 of them from me. So I'm going to say, since I can't include Gremlins or Rocky Horror Picture Show that were at the top of my list, I'm just going to go ahead and include Sweeney Todd, Willy Wonka, Hairspray, The Lost Boys, The Man with Two Brains, Elvira, Mistress of the Night. I can the tagline for that one, but Dark Crystal, The Three Amigos, Weird Science, Tremors, Labyrinth, Clue, referenced it before, James, The Goonies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Spaceballs, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Megan, Beetlejuice, Slacks, Better Off Dead, Transylvania 65000, Big Trouble in Little China, Sorry to Bother You, which was mentioned, and last but not least, Disney's Hercules. And no, James, I did not mention Frankenstein.
That's amazing.
Nice.
I'd like to throw in Moon. Just kidding. I can't resist doing it. It's only been like 45 episodes now that I've mentioned Moon. But anyway, so Anthony, that brings it back to you. You want to tell people where to find you on social and purchase your books and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm pretty much all over the internet. I'm on Twitter, which is just always going to be known as Twitter. I'm at Anthony JENGEBR. But I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, where I think that's where I do my finest shit posting, in my opinion. But actually, right now I'm kind of weaning off of social media a little bit. I mean, I kind of can't completely, if I want to self promote, but I'm spending less time generally on social media. But I do have a website, anthonyengebretson.com, where I have all my links and stuff, and kind of have all that in one place. And I have a writer's blog called raccoonalleyblog.wordpress.com. And that's kind of, I don't update it super consistently, but I have updates, musings, short stories, so a lot of stuff that people can check out. So really, you couldn't throw a virtual rock without hitting my mug somewhere on the internet. I'm kind of all over. Yeah, I mentioned I have a couple books out. Sarah Baines from Ghost Orchid Press, and Lumberjack from Tenebrous Press, and I'd recommend always getting those on the author websites, so Tenebrous Press and Ghost Orchid Press. But those are also available, pretty much anywhere that you can buy books.
Well, cool. thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah.
Like I said, I hadn't watched this in like 20 years, and it was totally fun all over again. So even though I remembered some of it, most of it was enjoying it again for the first time, you know?
Yeah.
And man, I loved it. It was so good.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun, and it was so fun to be able to revisit this movie again and talk about it.
Absolutely. All right, I guess that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata. And Don's gone. So I'll just say, I'm Don. Because I don't know where he went. He's just muted.
Oops.
I was on mute, singing to myself. And yeah, I'm gonna be very cautious during the eclipse. So,
well, by the time they listen to this, they'll know if we died or not.
Good deal.
hey, just don't take the offer, because if it sounds too good to be true, probably is. Plant's gonna eat you.
That's good advice. We will see you next week here at thenecronama.com.